Good morning and a very warm welcome to all of you joining us today on behalf of Infomed. I am delighted to welcome His Excellency David McKinnon, the High Commissioner to Sri Lanka and the Maldives, to deliver the welcome address. Over to you, Your Excellency.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you to everybody, Sanjeev Jha and Mahmoud Hussain and all the rest of you, ladies and gentlemen, for being here this evening. It's real pleasure, and I'm glad through the, I don't know whether Raja Abhisinghe is online from the Sri Lanka Canada Business Council. Is he online tonight, Raja Abhisinghe?
Yes, he is. Yes,
okay, good. I need to put out a shout out to the Sri Lanka Canada Business Council for giving me the opportunity, opening up this opportunity for me to say a few words. So thank you very much to them. I'll keep my remarks brief because it's important to get to the substance of the event this evening, or this morning, depending on where you're sitting. Trade is the engine of growth for smaller economies in countries like Canada and Sri Lanka. And in fact, I think both of our histories reflect that in different ways. But it's important that innovation, to note that innovation and competitiveness come through being open to imports as well as encouraging exports. There's a sort of holistic approach to this. I just put that out there given current circumstances. Canada, of course, is a long-standing partner of Sri Lanka, and we have strong economic and people-to-people links that go back to enormous bilateral development cooperation we had under the Colombo Plan. That started in the 1950s. Our economic links have advanced considerably since then, and I'm pleased to say that they're very much driven by the private sector. Canadian and Sri Lankan companies collaborate in agriculture, pulp and paper, aircraft and aircraft parts, sophisticated building technologies. I love the fact that there is Canadian technology going in for air conditioning in Sri Lanka. It seems a little counterintuitive, but there you go. Sportswear companies like Lululemon, and there are operations with MAS here. Engineering, architecture, Bitcoin, blockchain, sorry, food processing, financial services. There's also significant Canadian investment in Sri Lanka, which Sanjeev knows well. And I think that's a sign of a long-term commitment by Canadian interests to Sri Lanka. And I'm really happy there's also a new generation of Sri Lankans learning or having the opportunity to learn in Canada, understanding what a high quality, rewarding educational university system that we have. And I see them as being a new generation of these people-to-people links, which will help facilitate the ties between our countries, but also importantly help facilitate business. And we, of course, at the High Commission, want to expand these links further, really looking at the expansion of those links is a benefit to Sri Lankans and to Canadians. And we're very keen to get Sri Lankan companies interested in doing business in Canada or with Canada. Could be exporting from here, could be importing from Canada, could also be investing, establishing a presence in Canada. And on that last point, I mean, beyond the $2 trillion Canadian economy, which I think Sri Lankan companies are very interested in, we've negotiated 15 free trade agreements with a total of 49 countries that provide access to a combined gross domestic product of about $50 trillion with 1.5 billion consumers. So that's part of that openness I was talking about that's important. But it also means there's a lot to be gained by a presence in Canada. And for those who might be interested in sourcing from Canada or finding a Canadian partner, I encourage you to talk to the commercial section of the Canadian High Commission here in Colombo. I also want to flag the important work that the commercial team in the Sri Lankan Consulate General in Toronto does, helping to secure potential Canadian buyers of Sri Lankan goods. We really, between the two organizations, I think complement each other very well. And I think it's great having Mahmoud Hussain here also to give some pointers about doing business in Canada, because again, it's all part of the same puzzle, or same story on trade, I think. Now, I can't really sort of avoid talking about a little bit about the pandemic. And, the world has changed dramatically in the last year and a half, and I still don't think we understand the full import of what the shift is going economically, but also in terms of geopolitics. And it's been an extraordinarily challenging time, and many countries, including Sri Lanka, are really in the throes still in the throes of containing the virus. Hoping that with the increased availability of vaccines, we can see light at the end of the tunnel, even as work remains to be done. And in this regard, Canadians are seeing benefits from an aggressive vaccination plan, which has really hit its stride over recent months. And that is resulting in a loosening of restrictions, including on travel by those who are fully vaccinated. But that is a success that's a result of a long fight and a long effort. And we really can't down our vigilance, I think, on this. Part of that is Canada has also understood that, no, the world isn't safe until everybody is. And so as part of that response on COVID-19, we've been a significant contributor to the COVAX initiative to supply vaccines to 92 lower and middle income countries, including Sri Lanka and Maldives, actually, which I also am accredited to through international development assistance. So Canada's $440 million contribution to COVAX is through the system benefiting Sri Lankans, even if the vaccines are not arriving quite as quickly as we might have hoped. Despite the immediate need to sort of combat the pandemic and get over that incredible hump, it's also important to focus on the opportunities from the post-pandemic recovery, which seems to be very strong in a number of countries. And I would have to think that in this region that will happen as well. So Sri Lanka's natural and human resources and strategic locations or assets have driven Sri Lanka's historic success and provide potential for the future with the right policy settings. And as always, Canada is ready to collaborate with Sri Lanka to help achieve these goals. So I wish this evening's event on why Sri Lanka great success. And I should also extend my congratulations to the Sri Lanka Canada Business Council on an important milestone of 30 years of service. I wish the SLCBC its continued success to strengthen those bilateral economic ties. With that, I'll pass it over to the moderator, and thank you very much again for giving me the opportunity to say a few words.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for that wonderful welcome address. Next, I would like to invite Mr. Sanjeev Jha, founder and principal of Strum, advisory board member of Simbo platform, consultant at Fairfax Asia, and former managing director and CEO of Fairfirst Insurance Limited. Thank you, and over to you.
Ayubowan, and good morning, dear friends who are joining from Canada. Good evening to all of us who are in Asia. Wonderful to be here, and I must thank Jihan and the entire team at Informate for thinking about me. David has set the context extremely well, and very happy to be sharing the platform with him. Very happy to be meeting Mohammed. So good to meet you, Mohammed. And I know you, like, we are very far away, but I think we're talking on a common platform, so that is good. And I'm delighted that I'll be talking about what I'll be talking over the next few minutes will be something that is very close to me, and that is about Sri Lanka. So let me share the slides, and then we can spend some time about why Sri Lanka. Can you guys see this?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay, just a minute. This is okay now. Is that better, Venu?
Perfect. Thank you.
Brilliant. So why Sri Lanka? So let me tell you about my personal story. I came to Sri Lanka in 2015. I was working in a beautiful country called Oman, which is in the Middle East. Absolutely brilliant place and lovely people. And my wife and I were there, very happy there. And then I get a call saying that, would I like to come and work in Sri Lanka? And of course, we knew about Sri Lanka. Being fans of cricket, one knows the legacy that Sri Lanka has on cricket. So we were, my wife and I both were very keen to say, okay, let's go and explore it. So we came in 2015, and it was one of the best decisions we made. We came in at a fairly, my task was fairly complex. I had to turn around a company that was acquired by Fairfax Group, and turnarounds are never easy, but we did that, and I'll tell you a bit more about that in the slides ahead. Then we acquired another insurance company, and then we had to integrate the two, which is again a complex task, and again we did that. And I must make it very clear that I was the only non-Sri Lankan in the entire team. The entire thing was done by the team back in Sri Lanka. We started the operation, we created a brand new brand, and within 6 years of operation, we became one of the top insurance brands of Sri Lanka. And that was done because purely by the resilience, by the brilliance, by the enthusiasm of the Sri Lankans. And that's the story I want to talk about. I really want to talk about how wonderful this country is. It's a country that is gorgeous. It is blessed with beautiful beaches, wonderful hill country, absolutely stunning hillsides and beaches. Great people. You roam around Sri Lanka and you'll find such charming and generous people across the island, and it's absolutely wonderful. Of course, like all parts of the world, they don't trust the foreigner easily, and which is fine, which is okay. I think that's what happens in all our parts of the world. But otherwise, by nature, they are extremely generous and a wonderful people. I was mentioning about the challenges that I had running a company which went through a turnaround and acquisition, and what I realized over the initial 6-7 months was that once the team understands the why, the logic behind the what, they really back you, and I found that, and it was absolutely wonderful, the amount of change, the amount of turnaround that the team did. One of the big highlights for us in Sri Lanka was that Fairfax, which is a Canadian group, Fairfax Financial Holdings, and one of the largest insurance groups now in the world, they have a global awards called the Fairfax President's Award for Innovation. In 2019, that award was won by Sri Lanka. And why it's important why is it really important? Because Sri Lanka was competing with insurance majors, right, from companies like Brit in UK, to Zenith, to Odyssey in US, extremely large powerhouses. And we are a small little company. We possibly in the Fairfax balance sheet will be a decimal place in their entire P&L. But point is, this team in Sri Lanka won the Fairfax Innovation Award, and they won it not by picking up technology from some other parts of the world. They won it from a homegrown technology that was done by a small little IT shop in Sri Lanka, and extremely passionate and proud. And now that entire innovation platform is being taken by Fairfax in other parts of the world. So very exciting. So one thing we realized, and one thing I realized very early in Sri Lanka, was that Sri Lanka will never become the biggest market. It will never be. The size is just too small. But there's nothing stopping Sri Lanka and Sri Lankans to be the best in the world. And that is the position that Sri Lanka has to take. It already is the best. It has the best beaches. It has the best sunsets, the best sunrises. And I think there's nothing stopping Sri Lanka to becoming the best in whatever they decide to do, especially in the technology and in that space. So I'm going to talk about 4 reasons why Sri Lanka is important, and then I'll leave it with you. And some of the reasons have been covered in the video that was played earlier. But the first one is about location. I think Sri Lanka is extremely well located in a strategic manner. It is part of China's Belt and Road, and I'm not talking politics. This is not without politics, but being part of China's Belt and Road strategy makes it a destination for investment by China, which is good. It has 4 deep sea ports and 17 airports, and that number is increasing on a regular basis as the focus on infrastructure continues. Very important to Japan, to India, to China, because of the various benefits it has, various legacies it has, like Buddhism makes Japan very interested. US, of course, very interested. Again, one interesting point people who know, is that Sri Lanka was the fueling center for the Allied forces, air forces, when they were going towards South Asia during the World War. So that's a very interesting thing. So it's a very important location. It has access to about 40% of the world's population through FTAs with India, Pakistan, Singapore, and GSPs with EU and China. And again, I understand that politics sometimes mixes of these things, but the point is it is an important location. So that's point number one. Location is extremely important. Point number two is that the social demographics of Sri Lanka is extremely powerful and extremely well placed when you compare its peers set around Southeast Asia and South Asia. It has one of the highest literacy rates at around 93%. English is a linked language, so which is great. So there are many Sri Lankans who understand English. It's an economically active population of about 8.5 million population from a total population of about 21 million. And one very important social demographic index that I find is the male to female ratio, where there are actually 92 males per 100 females. Why is this important? Because in many parts of the world where education hasn't been important, the ratio is flipped around, and that often hurts the entire progress of the nation. In terms of SDI, interestingly, Sri Lanka is placed at much higher than my own home country, which is India, and which is quite fascinating when you look at the investment that Sri Lanka has done on its social demographics. So point one was location, which places it very importantly. Point two is the social demographics, which gives it a certain robustness that despite the politics and economics, it will remain a vibrant country in the medium to long term. Infrastructure. It's a young country in terms of infrastructure development. I think in all serious earnest, the infrastructure development started only about a decade back, but already you're seeing the progress dramatically. When we moved to Sri Lanka in Colombo in 2015, and this image is very close to the apartment that we were staying in, we could see the sea across every side of our apartment. But now that entire area has got, the skyline has changed with amazing buildings and condos, which is exciting. Great roadways are getting built. There's electricity across the island, which is exciting. And of course, the most important thing for the digital world is that the mobile penetration is at 126%, smartphone at 46%, and the internet penetration is 60% and growing on a regular basis. So that was point three. Point four is specifically talking to your trade. I think there's a lot of incentives and programs that the government is running to encourage investments in the ITES area. There is a vision that they want to create 200,000 jobs in this sector. There are certain benefits given to companies that invest more than 10 million USD. I think Venu or maybe in the video it was mentioned that it has a very strong education system which provides qualified engineers who are actually globally capable and competent. But that's a pool of talent that comes in on a regular year. And I'm sure that pipeline is only going to increase as more institutes come in. And there's already a nice setup of about 300 companies in the ITES space, which provides that ecosphere for new companies to set up. So that was the reason number four. So to summarize, why Sri Lanka? I think it's point number one: extremely strong social demographic network, very solid and strengthening infrastructure, a very enabling and positive climate for investment gathering, and the location. And of course, the things what are not there in the slide is the wonderful beaches, the wonderful hillside, the great cuisine, the lovely food, and the brilliant people that are there. So with that, I would say, don't feel shy. Just drop a mail to Mohammed or someone, and I'm sure they'll find you, or drop a mail to David and his team, and I'm sure they'll find you. They'll welcome you into Sri Lanka. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jha, for that insightful and wonderful keynote address. Next, I would like to invite Mr. Jehan Perimpanayaga, Chief Executive Officer of Informate Private Limited, Vice President of the John Keels Group, and Director Finance, Platcom. Thank you, and over to you.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Sanjeev. Sri Lanka is known for its beaches, the best tea, and the best gems. But my job today is to uncover a hidden gem, the IT BPM industry. A little known fact is that global brands such as Apple, Amazon, London Stock Exchange, IFS, HSBC, and many others make use of Sri Lankan talent for software and services. And many international rating agencies, including the Global Sourcing Association UK, ranked Sri Lanka as Destination of the Year 3 times, 2013, 14, and 19, Offshoring Destination of the Year. A.T. Kearney, the famed research agency, ranked Sri Lanka first in terms of financial attractiveness in their Global Services Location Index. And when it comes to the spirit of innovation, Sri Lanka was ranked second in South Asia by WIPO. So very strong credentials when it comes. And when you listen to client testimonials like Chris Till, the global head of consumer services, HSBC, he says one of the sites where I actually see the most innovation, also one of the most proactive. Working with Sri Lankan team in Colombo, they are one of the most receptive teams anywhere in the world. So echoing what His Excellency and Sanjeev shared. China, the New York Times had this famous quote, China has its assembly plants. India, its customer support centers, research laboratories, and lawyers. And Sri Lanka's contribution to global outsourcing, thousands of them standing by to crunch the world's numbers. So something I often say, beautiful country, boring people. Too many accountants. And just listen to Anne Neidenbach, the CIO of London Stock Exchange, on her experience with Sri Lanka.
When the LSE went live on the Millennium platform, we were one of the fastest trading systems on the planet. So, I mean, it's really a tribute to the talent that's down in Sri Lanka. I can't say this enough. We really enjoyed the culture down there, think extremely highly of the talent down there, and really sort of embraced being Sri Lanka. When
a little of Sri Lanka's infrastructure. We have strong telecom infrastructure, one of the first in the region to implement 4G and now 5G. 95% of the island is covered with its 4G network. We have 7 telco operators providing good backup, 5 submarine cables out of Sri Lanka, and a very high mobile penetration. And in terms of cost per GB of data, one of the lowest costs in the world. So strong telco infrastructure. And as Sanjeev said, world-class healthcare and education. Sri Lankans highly prize education, and our healthcare infrastructure and education infrastructure ranks favorably against our neighbors in the region. And when it comes to talent, 210,000 sit for the advanced level annually. 135,000 successfully complete the advanced level, and 65,000 enroll in state and private tertiary education per annum. So this is a rich pool of talent. And there are dedicated technology parks. For instance, Orion City, which spans 16 acres, 550,000 square feet, over 6,000 employees, and the government has been extremely supportive towards this industry. They're looking at 3 new IT parks in different parts of the country. And if you look at the cost of grade A office space, it is very competitive at $2 per square foot. Coming to the BPM industry, the industry that I've worked in over the last decade. Today, there is a workforce of 88,000 in software and 25,000 in the BPM industry. Again, as Sanjeev said, very good male to female ratio. And in the BPM industry, it's nearly 50% female representation in the workforce, a statistic which we are very proud of. And the attrition, if you look at the attrition rates compared to industry standards, we are very, very attractive. So Sri Lankans are very loyal and a committed workforce. And if you look at the composition of services that are offered in the IT services space, it's a very wide range of services. We were known initially for finance and accounting, and while that remains strong, there are a whole range of new services, including data analytics, project management, legal process, HR outsourcing, receivable revenue cycle management, supply chain management, healthcare transcription services, so a wide array of services. So these are some statistics that were compiled from a brand new SLASCOM report, the BPM State of the Industry report, which was just released and presented to the Secretary, the Ministry of IT, Jayanta De Silva, a few days ago. And our clients span the globe, from North America to Australia, from the snow-capped mountains of Norway and Sweden to the fjords of New Zealand. There are companies powered by Sri Lankan talent. And several internationally recognized brand names, large players in the BPM space. Innodata, Isogen, has close to 1,000 people in Sri Lanka. R.R. Donnelly was one of the first, I think they are close to 30 years in Sri Lanka with a workforce about 1,000 here. HSBC has 3,000 people in Colombo. Equity, then you've got WNS, Accenture, HSBC, all of London Stock Exchange. All of them have chosen Sri Lanka to locate their back office. And this is something that we are justly proud of. Language capability. Surprising statistic that we serve clients in Korean, in Italian, in French, in German, in Japanese, and a whole range of other languages, including Polish, Slovakian, Croatian, and Arabic, and several others. So Sri Lanka has something for every company in their language and ready to serve the world. We champion diversity. We are very proud of the nearly 50% female representation. And in a few days' time, we are going to have the first female chair of SLASCOM, Sandra D'Souza. And HDPL, we have the first country head who is a female, Niluka Fernando. So at the highest levels of leadership, we have female representation, something that we are very proud of. And it is inclusive growth in this industry. It's not just in Colombo. We are looking to make a difference. So I was at a very interesting session where the industry is looking at championing ESG, environmental, social, and governance practices in the IT BPM industry. So this is a snapshot of my own company's initiative to create rural jobs through the BPM industry in Jaffna, in the fishing village of Sinigama, and in the farming village in North Central Province. And 95% of those employed are female. The industry is looking at adding on an exciting range of new services: facilities management, investment research, architecture and design, tax processing, data annotation. We have something for everyone. And the new skills in demand, as per the BPM State of the Industry research that was carried out, includes market research. We are looking at the industry growing by 20% year on year. A few things of Sri Lanka, which I believe is unique, ideally suited as a niche destination for highly skilled talent. A center of excellence for accounting. There is a lot of experience serving leading brand names in US, Europe, and Australia. Attrition rates which are attractive. And there is a strong focus on value addition, process improvements, and innovation. Natural disasters. We have a very good track record in terms of no work stoppages and a very safe destination. Throughout the pandemic, our industry has maintained 100% uptime and uninterrupted services. And because we are smaller, there is a higher level of individual attention and senior management involvement. And the pandemic, actually, as sad as it has been, as devastating as it has been, has some opportunities for companies, because people are now more attuned to the work being done remotely. And Sri Lanka is ideally suited to be a BCP destination to de-risk your strategy. So you could have the main center in India or in Philippines, and you could have your BCP center in Sri Lanka. So in conclusion, why Sri Lanka? Sanjeev articulated this so well. Robust, competent, and niche talent pool, the spirit of innovation that pervades our workforce. One of the highest literacy rates, some of the best and most advanced technology and infrastructure, and the experience of 30 years of serving the biggest brand names in the world. The island of ingenuity. It's been a privilege. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Perimpanagam, for the remarkable country statistics of Sri Lanka. I'm pleased to welcome Mr. Mohammed Hussein, the project manager for Asia and Middle East region of TFO Canada. Over to you, Mr. Hussein. Thank you.
Thank you very much. His Excellency David McKinnon, Mr. Jahan Peripanangan, and Mr. Sanjeev Jha, and the organizers. Good evening and good morning, all over the world who are listening to this one at this moment. I would first like to say thank you very much for wonderful presentations and the wonderful informations that has His Excellency David McKinnon has shared with us. This is a very, I would say, inspiring informations and very good informations for all of us to see the bridge and the upcoming relationship that we can make more strengthened going forward. I'd like to share the screen with my presentation. Can you see the presentation?
Yes, we can see. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So exporting to Canada, Sri Lanka, and the TFO Canada and the Canadian government relationships. First, I would like to inform a little bit about the TFO Canada. TFO Canada is a non-profit organization. It's a Trade Facilitation Office Canada. The history of TFO Canada is basically it was the part of the Canadian government back in 1980s up to 1985. Then it becomes an independent organization. Our headquarters is in Ottawa, and there is a regional representative in Quebec and Ontario and British Columbia. TO4 Canada, our mandate, you can see, is to improve lives through creation sustainable trade partnerships from developing countries to Canadian and foreign buyers. And we like to recognize in our vision statement that improving lives through facilitating sustainable trade opportunity for small and medium enterprise can really support a win-win situations between the countries. TO4 Canada actually working and receiving funds, majority of the Canadian government. And also there are some other like Islamic Development Bank, ITFC, IDRC, Co-Water, and several funders are funding as we are nonprofit organizations and facilitating the trade partnerships with developing countries and the buyers of North America. TO4 Canada's, we have basically three types of users. I think the previous speakers has mentioned a lot of companies and the country-wise potentiality of different companies and how that can be facilitated in going forward to do the business between these two countries. So we have foreign suppliers. You can see on the left side the free online matchmaking services, access to Canadian import database, market information paper. Then we have Canadian buyers when we do the client country profiles and we link them, and the trade support organizations. There should be a trade support organizations who is going to breach this relationship and sustainably support that to the ASMEs in the developing countries. The services that TO4 Canada ensures is informations. We provide a guide to export to Canada, market information paper. When we say market information paper, it's about the Canadian market, the demand side. What are the buyers looking for? So detailed informations by sectors are available. Webinars, newsletter, trade news events, and we have advice. We have trade capacity building projects with the trade support institutions, and we do the market entry study with the Canadian MBA program students. And the contact at the end, we wanted to ensure that foreign suppliers and the Canadian buyers must have a business relationship at the end of the day that helps to create the win-win situations through trade show and B2B meeting in Canadian buyers. If you go to the Canadian Trade Facilitation Office, our website, there will be, you will find that the online information is available. This is completely funded by the Canadian government. It's a free of charge. So the suppliers can register and get access to Canada informations, product specific market trends, export to Canada buyers informations, find relevant news and event webinars. So if you go to the home page, you sign in as a partner, as a company, you can customize the dashboard, and then you can provide full access Canada guide over here and all those informations in our websites. So different subsector based market information papers, and those where you will get all the informations regarding the Canadian buyers demand and the market size and market behavior. I will not go too much detail, but just would like to mention that, you know, the Canadian demographics is important for our suppliers, and it's a population of 37.6 million. And you can see that many of those, like 85% are Canadian, 62% are Canadians. 1.1 of 3 Canadians live in Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver. 7% you can see the other religion. 66% are the Christian, 24% are non-religious, and 3% are Muslims. It is important to know because many different products are also characterized by the population size and demographics. And language, by language, you can see 56% people are speaking English, and 42% in French, and 2% are different languages. In July 2019, you can see 6 million Canadians are 65 years old and over, and senior accountable in 17.5% of the Canadian population, July 1, 2019. And the median age is around 44 years. Baby boomers born in 1946 to 1965 dominated the Canadian market. 1 in 6 Canadians are age of 65. This helps to understand the suppliers or the exporters how to design their product and where to target and what to export to Canadian market. I'll not go through this one. And then the Canadian consumers, you can see the food is actually having 13%, shelter 29%, income tax 23%, consumer goods and services 34%. It's a big market that the Canadian consumers are consuming from international market. And there are a lot of trends coming from ethnic products, health products, and personal care, niche specialty, all these things. So average income of the Canadian population is $87,930. It's from the 2018, and that helps to understand the income and expenditure patterns of the Canadian importers. You can compare it with the USA. If you see the import size over here, I mean, in terms of the populations, why people want to expand the trade relationship with Canada, because the GDP and the population size-wise, USA is big, but in terms of imports per capita, you can see 15,815 are the Canadian market, because Canadian market is highly depending of international exporters, and they are really looking for everyday, very innovative products and service-oriented products as well. Top 10 important countries are the United States, China, Mexico, Japan, Korea. We want to increase these things, more developing countries. So how we can really support those things and what are the products that they are looking for, that needs to be matched with the Canadian market. Canadian imports by sectors. I mean, you can see over here several figures. I'll not go into it, but these are the massive figures you can see by sectors, like apparel, 14 billion. And if you go to the fish, it's 3.9 billion. So in 2019, 601 billion imports has been done from other countries. Impact of COVID-19, definitely it has an impact. I mean, there's reduction has happened in decrease of global trade by 13 to 32%. And it has emerging Asian countries, you can see from 13.1% to imports has been decreased by 17%. In the Latin America and Africa, Middle East regions also reduced. But it is also going to be, we know, increase by the coming years. Over the last 2020 data, Sri Lanka has exported 373.6 million Canadian dollar to the Canadian market. Sri Lanka exports Canada are mostly knitted and clothing, apparel, woven clothing apparel, and rubber and articles. And these are the different percentage by the sectors that Sri Lanka is exporting to Canada. And TFO Canada is also providing the support to step-by-step guide to the small and medium enterprises. So implementations to the classifications, documentations, and then transportation, how it helps the SME to get into the export to Canada or in North America. So it is very important what we have understood in our 40 years experience, that SME must have an understanding of the market and understand the Canadian regulatory environmental policies and understand the potential buyers and importers rules and regulations. So these are the different type of facilities and supports that under the funding of the Canadian government, TFO Canada provide to the SMEs and different TSIs. We work with the importers, broker agents, retailers to ensure the distribution channels. And major trade shows are there in Canada that needs to be disseminated to the SMEs and the potential sector associations. Canadian import database where the Canadian, Sri Lankan or the exporters from the developing country can identify the value of the imports that Canadian market is doing. And it is by HS code and you can generalize it. CBSA custom tariff schedule, it is also available in online. So the exporters can provide the informations and get the informations. It's available. MFN tariff, which most of the SMEs doesn't know. So most favorite nations, they get the tariff reduced rate. That is also a good outcome of the trade and bilateral agreement. Another important information for the exporters is automated import reference system, AIRS. It's in the website, link is there. So people and the SMEs can easily get access to those informations and understand the details of the export regulations. There are several modes which can be used easily for getting access to the Canadian market and judge the cost of the export. So as a next step for the SMEs and the trade support organizations is, this is one, get registered to the TFO Canada website, update the supplier's profile and access to the Canadian guide, market information paper, understand the regulations and meet the Canadian buyers and attend the Canadian trade shows and create your market entry strategy. And that's all. This is the team from the TFO Canada. Zaki Munshi is the program director. Myself, Mahmoud Hussein, is the project manager, and Fatima Zahara Idrisi is the project officer Asia. Thank you very much for listening to the long presentation. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hussein, for the great presentation showcasing Canadians' country statistics. Next, we would like to take the question and answers from the audience. First, there's a question to Jahan. The question is as follows. Informate has been providing resources and back office services to Australia and Europe extensively. What has been the client experience? How are these markets different to each other? What are the similarities? How would you use these experiences gained from these mature markets to service the North American market?
Thank you very much, Imran, for that question. So we've been working over a decade with the Nordics, Australia, and of late with the UK. And it has been a very good run, a very positive run. We've learned a lot from that. So each market has its own nuances, which we aim to understand. So a few cultural differences in terms of how they communicate. But broadly, I think the experiences are very similar. They're all looking for committed SLAs to make sure that we deliver on what we promise, on what we commit to, that we communicate openly. If there's a problem, let's be open about it. And they are also looking at innovation. They are not looking at just handling the process as it is, but they want us to think, to come up with ideas, with recommendations and with suggestions. And in these respects, I think it is very similar to North America, of course, and to Canada and the US. Each country will have its own specifics. And in terms of North America, I think the delivery standards expected are very high. But we are very confident with our decade of experience over the last so many years with Australia and Europe that it is the right time to work with Canada and the US. Thank you.
Thank you, Jahan. That was spot on. And the next question is for Sanjeev. Sanjeev, what are your thoughts on the quality of Sri Lanka's accountants?
Oh, I think they're brilliant. I think Sri Lankan accountants and auditors have been exported all over across the world. I know that many of them operate in the Middle East. Many of them are in Canada. Many of them are in Australia. And I've been, yeah, I think it's been great. I think when I came into Sri Lanka, my CFO at that time decided to move on to Australia, and then we sort of invested in a young colleague, and now he's extremely competent and doing very well. So I'll happily put my stamp of saying that the Sri Lankan accountants, auditors, as underwriters and as actuaries, they're very, very smart.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sanjeev. We have a question from Mila to Jahan. India and Philippines have been a huge success in BPM industry. What additional value and or USPs does Sri Lanka bring to the table?
Thank you for that, Milan. Each country has its strengths. So Philippines is very strong in voice. India is very strong in terms of managing large projects. And I believe Sri Lanka for finance and accounting and mid-sized niche projects is ideally suited. So a few unique things that I have come across about the Sri Lankan delivery in terms of BPM is innovation and process improvements. So their agents are thinking, they're looking at automating, looking at making things faster, better, access to niche talent. Recently, I had a call with an Australian gentleman who was using one of the larger locations. And whilst he continued to do that, he was looking at certain areas for Sri Lanka where he lacked access to talent. So access to niche talent would be number 2. And the third is openness. Sri Lankans will not overpromise and underdeliver. We would prefer to underpromise and overdeliver. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Jahan, for that. We have another question from Unesh. What are the dispute resolution mechanisms in place in Sri Lanka for companies investing in Sri Lanka? Do these have to go through the local courts? So I'll open that up to the panel. So please, anyone up for grabs?
So I think the dispute settlement that at least I've experienced goes through the very typical process of starts off with an informal process of chatting between the two parties, then the mediation, then the arbitration, and if it reaches a certain level, then it goes to the court. So I think it's a fairly standard process. There's nothing unique that happens in Sri Lanka in terms of dispute settlement.
Thanks, Sanjeev. That was well answered. We have a question from Imran to Mr. Hossain. Mr. Hossain, the USA and Mexico are part of the NAFTA, which provides a lot of advantages to exporters from those two countries. How would Sri Lankan companies create a compelling proposition that would overcome the advantages other countries have in terms of access, proximity to the Canadian market?
So I would say for the Canadian market, I mean, it is important for the suppliers to maintain the requirement the buyers are looking for. I mean, in terms of that, there are some behavior of the Canadian buyers that sometimes they would like to spend more money if the appropriate corporate social responsibilities and environmental climate compliances are met. There are a tendency of the Canadian buyers that they would like to spend a little bit more to ensure that those are the things has been maintained into the supplier side. That's one. But in terms of when a supplier thinking about enter into the Canadian market, that's because it's a very large country, and the mode of the transportations and which market they are targeting, it also varies the cost propositions. So that's where the buyers need, the exporters, I would say, need to really analyze the cost and competing accordingly on that. So it's not to very straight answer by country because of these large demographic and geographic situations, but it depends on which product particularly they are looking for. And that is where these Canadian market information papers are available when they can analyze those things.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Mr. Hussein. One more question to you, Mr. Hussein, from Milan. Would like to know how well outsourcing is embraced? Are the Canadians open to have remote offshore business models? How does South Asia compare with South America?
I'm not sure that I understand the question correctly, but as far as I get the point is Canadian is very important. I mean, open to the international market. Like 70% of the Canadian products are depend on international market. So we're very highly depending on the imports. So there is no doubt there is the openness is there. But in terms of, as I said, the product needs to be really well placed. I mean, and then the Canadian buyers' behavior, one of their, like, as their seasons factors, and every seasons they have to really well planned ahead so that they can rightly place there. And the buyers are continuously looking for the different types of suppliers in different parts of the world, and definitely they are also competing not only the price but also the quality and the company background. I would say the same thing. I don't get the last point that you have asked. Could you repeat that one in the question, the last point?
To clarify, there are many offshoring operations for Canada out of South America. So any idea why they will align to South Asia, Sri Lanka versus Brazil, for an example?
I mean, offshore office is not a problem as long as the legislative, right? There are a lot of broker agents are working with the offshores exporters. So in terms of that, it's again, we are talking about the competition and the legislation. So the three things I would always mention that we have seen in our experience. One is the legal situations of the company and their export capacity. Number two is their product cost structure. And number three is the market informations, whether they know it or not. So these three things can aligns with the other countries as well at the same time. It's not always comparable in terms of which country is doing what. It is always comparable which product is coming with which authentic process.
Brilliant. Thank you, Mr. Hussain, for that impressive answer. Now we will move on to a video on why Sri Lanka.
Today, technology and digitization is changing the world, providing businesses with a myriad of opportunities previously unavailable. A huge opportunity that technology and the internet can now facilitate is the access to talent globally. Geographical boundaries are no longer a challenge, and the world is in your reach. You truly have access to global talent. You can now have your calls answered in the Philippines, your legal work done in India, and your accounting in Sri Lanka. Why Sri Lanka though? Here's what the Australian says. Some countries have oil, others sit on vast deposits of ore. Now Sri Lanka is striving to capitalize on its own bountiful resource, a mountain of accountants. Indeed, some suggest that accounting is now embedded in the national DNA. Did you know that Sri Lanka has the highest number of UK qualified accountants in the world outside of the UK? That the London Stock Exchange, HSBC, WNS, IFS, and Motorola all have back office centers in Sri Lanka? How about the fact that Sri Lanka's overall infrastructure score is higher than India and the Philippines? Or that Sri Lanka's tertiary education system is ranked among the best in Asia? And in terms of personal security, Sri Lanka is safer than the UK, India and Philippines with 0 work stoppages. A.T. Kearney concluded that Sri Lanka is a hidden gem for outsourcing. Today, this gem need no longer be hidden. You are in on the secret. And you truly have global access to Sri Lanka's rich talent pool. And here's how to tap into this rich pool of accounting talent. An extended office right here in Sri Lanka. And it's not just a rich talent pool, it's a pathway to reach world-class standards in the finance function through process reengineering, automation, governance, and best practices. Your extended office team in Sri Lanka will work with you in partnership and help you achieve truly world-class standards with measurable KPIs which are benchmarked and monitored throughout your journey to excellence. So whether it's access to the best talent or the quest for world-class standards, an extended office in Sri Lanka is your solution.
We have come to the end of this webinar. I would like to thank a few very special people. First is Excellency David McKinnon for gracing this occasion and for sharing those wonderful words of welcome, which set the stage. Mr. Sanjeev Jha, our keynote speaker, thank you very, very much, sir, for articulating the Sri Lankan story so very well. We were proud to have you. Mr. Mahmood Hussain, sir, it was a pleasure to have you. It was a great honor, and I learned so much about trade with Canada, and I look forward very much to collaborating with you and the association. Thank you, sir. Mr. Raja Abesinghe, President, Sri Lanka Canada Business Council. It was such a privilege working with you. We're really honored to work with the Canada Business Council and look forward to working closely in collaboration with you and your team. Thank you for your support. Mr. Ubali Obesekara, President, Canada Sri Lanka Business Council. It was such a privilege speaking to you a few days ago, and thank you so very much at short notice for your presence, for gracing the occasion, and for your support. We look forward to collaborating with the association in coming days and weeks. Mrs. Diniti Dias from the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce, always the hidden hand behind all of these programs. We're very grateful to you, madam. Thank you for your support and help. And sincere thanks to Mrs. Indrani Jayawardena and everyone at the High Commission to Canada, the Sri Lanka Canada Business Council, Canada Sri Lanka Business Council, the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce, and our attendees for your time and for your presence. We were so encouraged and delighted to have you. And we look forward to having you and hosting you at upcoming webinars as well. We hope this was a fruitful session. Please stay safe. Thank you.